For his ideal film, Kevin Costner risked everything. To finance it, he mortgaged his beach property. He was urged by his accountant not to spend $38 million of his own money. He didn't pay attention. The first film failed and made less money than he had put in. He's now having trouble finishing the remaining portions. He is transferring funds and selling goods. He's acting on a wing and a prayer, according to friends. Kevin Costner is currently trapped in a bad dream. And this is what's actually happening. In 1955, Kevin Costner was born in Linwood, a tiny Californian hamlet. His parents weren't well known or wealthy. Before becoming a utility worker, his father dug trenches. His mother was also receiving social benefits. Before Kevin was even born, the family had already experienced a catastrophe. At birth, his middle sibling passed away. Only Kevin and his older brother Dan remained. German, English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and even Cherokee ancestry were all mixed together in his family. They were devout Baptists, and they led a straightforward and occasionally difficult life. Back then, no one could have predicted that the unassuming youngster would grow up to be one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Kevin had an unresolved childhood. Due to his father's work, his family relocated frequently. He was constantly the new kid, going to several schools in Visalia, Compton, and Ventura. It was difficult to make friends. He became insecure and bashful as a result. But he began fantasizing instead of giving up. Poetry and music were consoling to him. He continued to write poetry in private, never sharing them with anybody. And he performed in the church choir. Something else left a greater impression than school. He viewed the movie How the West Was Won when he was 7 years old. It struck him hard. There was something about the vast, undeveloped frontier that stuck with him. That film sowed a seed that he had no idea would eventually blossom into the tales he would eventually deliver to the big screen. However, Kevin's initial concern was rather different. He was only 5 feet 2 inches when he graduated from high school. He felt a little uneasy about it. When he once asked his mother if he would ever grow, she only replied, "I promise you will, honey." She was correct. He gained 11 inches of height over the ensuing years, reaching 6 feet 1 inch. It is uncommon and is referred to by doctors as catch-up growth. But he was difficult even before he shot up. In high school he played baseball, football, and basketball, competing against much older players. Dennis Burt, one of his baseball buddies, even made it to the professional ranks. Even though Kevin didn't become a famous athlete, his strength and will to battle remained. In 1973, shortly after graduation, Kevin took a risk. He chose to accompany the Lewis and Clark expedition because he was so enamored with it. He constructed a boat himself. It wasn't attractive, but it was effective. He drove it alone after loading it into a dilapidated truck. He read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee Under the Stars while paddling rivers and camping in untamed areas. He was shattered by the book. It affected him and revealed the harsh reality of what Native Americans had to go through. He wept while reading it night after night. History wasn't the only reason for the journey. It altered his perspective on the world. It influenced his future storytelling, particularly in movies like Dances with Wolves. He became very concerned about the past and giving voice to individuals who had been silenced as a result of that summer. Something that most people wouldn't believe unless it was in a movie script occurred a few years later. Kevin has recently gotten married in 1978. He was taking his new wife on a flight back from Mexico. One of the greatest performers of all time, Richard Burton, was also on the same aircraft. Despite the fact that Burton had reserved every seat nearby, Kevin approached him, waited silently, and asked if he might speak for a little while. Kevin told Burton something he hadn't even said to his wife when he opened his eyes. He didn't want a life full of drama, but he wanted to be an actor. "You have green eyes," Burton replied, glancing at him. "My eyes are green. You'll be all right, I believe." That brief, odd moment lingered in Kevin's memory. Burton's limousine drew up next to Kevin and his wife, who were waiting for an inexpensive bus as their plane touched down. "Good luck," Burton told him, as he rolled down the window. That was it. Everything changed in that one instant. Within a month, Kevin resigned from his marketing position. In addition to working odd jobs to pay the expenses, such as driving trucks, fishing boats, and even offering bus tours of famous people's houses, he began attending acting courses every night. Despite his lack of fame, he had a spark ignited within of him. He had no resources, no contacts, and no obvious route. However, he had one item that was more important than everything else. He believed. Kevin Costner didn't begin with lavish salaries and red carpets. He subsequently wishes the movie had never been made. Desperate and impoverished in the late 1970s, he accepted a part in the low-budget film Sizzle Beach, USA. Costner had hated it by the time it was published in 1981. Something inside of Costner broke during the production of one of the personal sequences in the movie, which had soft-core aspects. No matter how long he had to wait for actual employment, he made the decision then and there that he would never do anything like again. There was a price for that choice. He scarcely worked for over 6 years, making ends meet with side employment and minor gigs. To ensure that no one would ever watch the film, he even attempted to purchase the rights afterward. The distributor, however, declined and re-released it. Using his name to sell tickets when he rose to fame, nothing improved his life, even if he did score a few parts. He was portrayed as a guy who had committed suicide in The Great Chill. The others got back together after his character died. All of the dramatic and impactful flashback moments were filmed by him. The filmmaker then edited everything out, including every scene. The first picture of his lifeless body was all that remained. Only a face, no cues, no acknowledgement. His big break was intended to come from it. It was a different door that smashed in his face instead, so he continued to grind. A supporting part in Francis. An unmemorable face in an ad, featuring the Apple Lisa. No one watched a couple more short flicks. Though he wasn't moving, he had been working, technically. The casting directors were unable to recall his name. He felt unnoticeable. Later, he said that it was like being the new kid every day at school. When he was younger, his family moved frequently, and he carried that sense of isolation into Hollywood. Nevertheless, he continued. He had a dream. He waited. The telephone then rang. Lawrence Kasdan was the one. The director who had excluded him from The Big Chill felt bad about it. Even though no one else saw it, he recalled how excellent Costner had been. He therefore offered him another, genuine opportunity. He proposed to cast him in Silverado. Not just any part, but one that would allow Costner to finally showcase his abilities. It was successful. Costner was vivacious, humorous, and endearing. People took notice. They recalled him for the first time. That movie opened doors. In 1987, one of the doors opened into The Untouchables. Despite having a large budget and well-known names, Costner somehow won. He was by no means the studio's first choice. Harrison Ford died. Mel Gibson and Jack Nicholson also did. However, Costner was endorsed by Steven Spielberg, who had previously collaborated with him. "This man is going someplace," he informed the director. He was correct. Costner held his own while starring alongside Sean Connery and Robert De Niro. The film earned more than $100 million. All of a sudden, Costner was no longer a struggling actor. Despite becoming a star, he didn't pause to rejoice. Bull Durham was his next move, and he wasn't only trying to play along, he desired for it to be genuine. Before filming, he forced the director to observe him play baseball. He arrived. He struck the plate from both sides. He tossed. He took off running. He demonstrated his ability. The film was then carried by him. Movie studios didn't think a baseball film would be a hit. Costner assisted in disproving them. The film received positive reviews from reviewers and earned over $50 million. He completed Field of Dreams a year later. A farmer in a cornfield hears voices in this eerie silent film. He will come if you create it. It got ingrained in American society. The movie brought in about $85 million. It received nominated for Oscars. It is still quoted today. It created memories in addition to revenue. Costner had aspirations outside acting by 1990. To produce the films he felt were important, he founded TIG Productions. Dances with Wolves was the first. Studios claimed it was too strange, too lengthy, and too dangerous. He was instructed to remove the sequences in Native American languages. No, he responded. He was instructed to reduce the budget. No, he responded. He invested millions of his own funds. It may have destroyed him. Rather, it earned over $400 million and won 7 Oscars. He continued. Together with Whitney Houston, he created The Bodyguard. Another risk, another reward. The music became the best-selling movie soundtrack of all time, and the film brought in over $400 million at the box office. He repeated it years later when no one else shared his belief in the Horizon Project. To finance it, he mortgaged his ideal home. The same heart, the same danger, the same motive, and the same thinking. Because Kevin Costner tells stories without waiting for approval, he merely constructs it. Acting was not all that Kevin Costner did. He threw himself into it. He studied Lakota Sioux for 9 months for Dances with Wolves. He worked with Native American consultants and requested that over a third of the film be in proper Lakota, not just a few words here and there. Studios were uneasy about such daring action. Orion Pictures accepted the chance, but 2 of them declined the project. A 60-year-old Lakota instructor named Doris Leader Charge was called on by Costner to interpret the screenplay and provide 6 months of coaching to the whole group. She said that during that 6-month period, her income exceeded all of her previous earnings from teaching on the Rosebud Reserve. Nevertheless, despite all of that work, some local viewers found the movie funny. Many of the male actors, including Costner, were speaking the feminine form of Lakota, according to Oglala Lakota activist Russell Means. Nevertheless, many took attention since this was one of the first Hollywood movies to include an indigenous tongue for such a large portion of the screen. Hollywood was rocked when Dances with Wolves won an Oscar in 1991. It won 7 Academy Awards out of 12 nominations on March 25 in front of about 43 million people. In addition to being nominated for Best Actor, Costner won Best Director, making him just the 6th person in history to do so for a debut picture. Many reviewers continue to debate whether it was fair that the film outperformed Scorsese's Goodfellas. However, it is evident that the Academy favored the expansive frontier epic over the grim mafia classic. Costner acknowledged that he hadn't trusted himself when he stood on stage with his Oscar. However, the outcome was indisputable. The first Western to win Best Picture in 60 years was Dances with Wolves. Costner continued to move quickly. He dived right into Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves a few days after finishing Dances with Wolves. There was little time for him to sleep. Due to the limited timeline, he performed the majority of the action solo and bypassed the stunt doubles. He jumped across moats, scaled castle walls, and even injured his shoulder in the process. In one outrageous feat, he used a catapult to throw himself over a wall that was 10 meters high. In order to get it correct, they had to calculate the physics down to the kilogram, which required around 5,000 kilos of force. A stuntman on a French set once volunteered to search for magic mushrooms in between takes. Given that they were about to have a sword battle sequence, Costner shrugged it off. "You ate mushrooms, Nick? In an hour we'll be swinging swords," he declared. They had to repeatedly recreate the taxing castle climbs as a result of jets from Heathrow Airport screaming overhead, destroying takes. Then JFK arrived. It was more than a position, it was a conflict. Costner portrayed Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney, who thought Kennedy's killing was the result of a conspiracy. Oliver Stone, the director, didn't mince words. The movie implied that the military, the CIA, the FBI, and even the vice president could have been involved. Months before it was ever released, it created a commotion. It was deemed harmful by government authorities, historians, and journalists. Costner, however, refused to give up. "It was liberating just to ask these questions," he told Time magazine. He said that any conversation about what could be the truth could only lead to our freedom. He didn't perform to prove Garrison correct. Making the audience take him seriously was the goal. And it was successful. Following the premiere of the film in December 1991, the U.S. government enacted legislation in 1992 allowing the public access to classified JFK assassination documents. However, The Bodyguard in 1992 was perhaps Costner's best professional decision. He might have accepted an upfront payment of $10 million. Rather, he bet on the movie's success and requested a cut of the earnings. Additionally, he felt Whitney Houston was ideal for the part, so he waited a full year for her calendar to open up. He was correct. The film generated $16.6 million in its first weekend of release on November 25, 1992, the same day as Disney's Aladdin. In the end, it made $410.9 million globally. It became Warner Brothers' biggest success in Japan, where it generated over $21 million. Costner received more than $20 million, maybe even $30 million, from the box office and album royalties. Over 50 million copies of the soundtrack, which included Houston's iconic rendition of I Will Always Love You, were sold. It took home the Grammy for Album of the Year. Costner had been right twice, once in cash, once in legacy. Once a member of Hollywood aristocracy, Kevin Costner's life began to unravel in 1994. It started with the film Waterworld, which was supposed to be his huge hit. Rather, it became a nightmare. In the middle of production, a hurricane struck the Hawaiian set. It destroyed a $5 million floating set, not just some rain. The pricey one wasn't even that. The main set, known as the Atoll, weighed more than 1,000 tons, was a quarter-mile wide, and cost $22 million. Hawaii ran out of steel, so they had to send it in from California. People nearly drowned. His co-stars were tossed off a boat. Costner almost perished when chained on a mast. The stunt coordinator had to be flown to a hospital after contracting compression sickness. The budget went haywire. After beginning at $65 million, it surged to $100 million, $135 million, and $175 million. It became a $235 million bet when you factored in $60 million for marketing. That was unheard of in 1995. The cost of Independence Day was a mere $75 million. People began referring to it as Kevin's Gate and fish tar. Even when home video later brought in money, the harm had already been done. He was now a joke rather than merely a movie star. The drama with the director followed. After 133 wretched days, Kevin Reynolds, his buddy and Robin Hood colleague, resigned. He departed with a scathing remark: "Kevin needs to take charge of his own destiny," and Costner did precisely that. By himself, he completed the movie. His 16-year marriage terminated at the same time. Some said that his actions on set were a reflection of his own suffering. The tabloids devoured it. Costner reportedly wanted digital hair inserted to disguise his thinning head, which made matters worse. He rejected everything, called it garbage, and said that he had never worked while intoxicated or high. The myth persisted. Nevertheless, people made fun of him. They called him conceited. They described him as challenging. It became a part of his unshakable diva label. He made another attempt with The Postman 2 years later. It struck much more forcefully. The film took home the Razzie Awards for Worst Director, Worst Actor, and Worst Picture. He was nominated for and won every category. It had never occurred before. Critics weren't just tired of him by 1998, they desired his departure. He didn't give up though. He returned with Open Range in 2003. It is a heartfelt old-school Western without any frills or fireworks. He co-starred with Robert Duvall and directed it himself. Over $68 million was made globally at a cost of $26 million. He placed a wager on himself, and it was successful this time. Then he astonished everyone in 2007. He portrayed a serial murderer in Mr. Brooks. Not a hero, not a cowboy, a killer with a flawless smile. It was gloomy. It was unsettling, and that was among his greatest actions to date. He scared you by projecting an impression of being a decent man. It was successful. He was earning Emmys by 2012. Hatfield's and McCoy's were realistic, brutal, and grim. Costner nearly declined the part. 3 times he said no, but when he did, magic happened. The debut drew almost 14 million viewers, reminding Hollywood why they first adored him. He won Best Actor, and he continued. He had excruciating discomfort from kidney stones in 2016 while filming Hidden Figures. He used morphine to act through it. He never skipped a day, not one. He simply rolled down his sleeves and continued shooting, despite the discomfort leaving his arms bruised. Yellowstone followed. Taylor Sheridan requested that Costner portray John Dutton in 2017. Costner was uncertain. He only consented to one season. Some restrictions, however, once the show debuted in 2018, it gradually gained enormous popularity. The spectacle was not ostentatious. People adored it even if it didn't receive many accolades. He made $500,000 each episode in the first season. That's a huge salary in and of itself. However, his pay increased in tandem with the show's meteoric rise in popularity. He was earning $1.3 million each episode by season 5. At that pace, he earned $18.2 million in a single season from 14 episodes. And he didn't think that was enough. He allegedly requested $1.5 million for each episode in 2023. He was working on his ideal project, an American tale called Horizon, at the same time. The producers of the program weren't happy about this. Schedules for filming conflicted. Previously 8-week shoots become 12-week commitments. Yellowstone's off weeks were when Costner had scheduled Horizon, but those off weeks kept changing. When the producers gave him a cut-up deal, seasons 5A and 5B, instead of complete seasons, everything went apart in early 2023. Costner declined. He looked over at Horizon. That decision eliminated John Dutton, and not in a dignified manner. Fans were taken aback by the mid-season debut in November 2024. Dutton's body was discovered in a bathtub with a message next to it. It appeared to be a suicide at first, but after 2 episodes, the reality was revealed. 3 hitmen sent by Sarah Atwood killed him by suffocating him. They attempted to make everything disappear by faking the suicide and leaving a phony note. However, it was unsuccessful. Case noticed the discrepancies. A murder investigation started. Then, during a reunion with Jamie, Sarah Atwood was shot twice in the head and chest and killed. It wasn't until the next day that Costner realized his last show had aired. In an interview the next morning, he acknowledged it. He added, "I heard it's a suicide. Doesn't entice me to watch it." At one point, he had given Dutton 2 endings. Neither was applied. Rather, the program made its own decision, which Costner openly rejected. Nevertheless, Costner took home more than $24 million in the last season, while other cast members were making $200,000 each episode. And the show hit ratings records even without him. 16.4 million people watched the debut of 5B, compared to the 15.9 million who saw the 5A premiere 2 years prior. That number was higher. In the first season, there were just 2.8 million. Costner was already on his way. Horizon was more than simply a movie. He was obsessed with it. In 1988, he began writing it. He was unable to let it go. He attempted to pitch it to Disney after Open Range in 2003, but they turned him down due to a $5 million budget issue. It remained unaltered for decades. Then, in 2022, he at last gained support, but at a cost. His 10-acre Santa Barbara beachfront home, which he referred to as his last house, was mortgaged. He informed his accountant that he would be contributing $38 million of his personal funds to Horizon. The accountant became frightened. Costner was unconcerned. He responded, "It's my life. I think it's real." The first 2 chapters had a $100 million budget. He provided over 1/3 of the funding himself. Following Dances with Wolves, Horizon Chapter 1 was slated to mark his triumphant comeback to filmmaking when it debuted at Cannes on May 19, 2024. Critics, however, disagreed. Others didn't like it, while others did, not helped by the box office. Globally, the movie only brought in $38.7 million. Costner persisted despite the fact that it was less than what he had personally contributed. 2 had its Venice debut. Filming for Chapter 3 started in May 2024. The 4th chapter is already under preparation. This project is not little. more than 170 speaking parts in 4 movies. Names like Luke Wilson, Sam Worthington, and Sienna Miller appeared in only Chapter 1. Costner was really committed. He persisted even after the money ran out. His personal life was as chaotic, notwithstanding the challenging box office performance of his films. In 1994, his first marriage to Cindy Silva came to an end. The divorce cost him $80 million. They didn't have a prenuptial agreement and had 3 children. He subsequently referred to it as one of his worst moments. However, it was stated that the two had re-established their friendship by 2025. She even supported him during his subsequent divorce. Christine Baumgartner provided that one. For 18 years they were wed. Her filing date was May 1, 2023. It was unexpected. This time he had a prenuptial agreement. However, the conflict was vicious. She was forced out of his houses. His monthly support payment was $63,209. She is engaged to Josh Connor, a former acquaintance of his, in early 2025. After she remarried, there were rumors that Costner intended to renegotiate the agreement. Then there were the whispers about Yellowstone. Crazy rumors began to circulate as soon as the divorce was finalized. On set, he allegedly got a staff member pregnant. He was allegedly missing filming, according to another. It was all rubbish, according to his crew. The rumors persisted though. It looked to be time to harm him. Costner resumed dating in early 2025, but he had one restriction: no females from Hollywood. He wanted someone normal, according to insiders. His pals attempted to set him up. He was behaving like a 20-something man. Nothing serious was what he desired. Not quite yet. He had previously experienced every stage of the Hollywood cycle: notoriety, union, controversy, separation, and now liberty. At 70, Kevin Costner is not slowing down but rather accelerating. Kevin Costner's The West, his new documentary series, will debut on the History Channel on May 26, 2025. There is more than one episode. To begin an 8-part series, there will be a special 2-episode event. The next evening, another episode airs before the program returns to its usual Monday time slot. This series is not like the others. Cowboys with flawless teeth galloping into the sunset aren't the point. It concerns territory, war, and the unvarnished reality of how the West was actually conquered, or pilfered. Costner collaborated with Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. Not only does he host, but he has a huge tail and big names. Academy Award winners are producing it with him. This isn't a project for retirement. It's a mission. However, that is only one aspect of his actions. Costner continues to struggle to complete his 4-part Horizon film series. The first chapter was terrible. On a budget of $100 million, just $38.7 million was made. The movie was a box office flop. Chapter 2's release was postponed by Warner Brothers due to anxiety. Costner, however, persisted. He acknowledged that the ascent became more difficult during the Venice Film Festival. He stated the rock slid back downhill. However, I need to touch it one more. That stone. This is the 3rd chapter. His personal funds have already been used to the tune of $38 million. He is currently looking for further projects to complete, maybe including chapters 3 and 4 in 2025, rather than just one movie. Even if the odds are against him, he seems to be even more motivated by them. My desire increases when I feel rejected, he remarked. Costner did more than simply write scripts and shout action to make all of this happen. He really constructed something. He announced a huge $100 million movie studio on 500 acres in Utah in February 2024. Territory Film Studios is the name of the company. Power, water lines and roads are all being constructed close to St. George Airport. A 39,000 square foot warehouse is part of Phase 1, being utilized to film Horizon already. Chapter 3. A 20,000 square foot soundstage and office space will be added in Phase 2, which is about to be completed. A restaurant with a Kevin Costner motif is even being discussed. The establishment may begin with 30 full-time positions and expand further if studios begin leasing space. This goes beyond a single film. Costner is making an effort to leave a legacy, but it's extremely hazardous. His finances suffered with the failure of Horizon. Chapter 1. The first weekend's revenue was just $11 million. That is far less than what was required. According to reports, he mortgaged his own California property, including his 10-acre Santa Barbara ranch, to support the film. Some claim that he disregarded his accountant's cautions. He's running out of time, according to others. His loved ones were concerned by the end of 2024. He was attempting to maintain the dream while selling items and transferring funds. He's working on a wing and a prayer, according to one source. He may lose considerably more if things don't improve.